Imagine waking up every day carrying an invisible stone on your chest. It weighs you down, it tightens, and it grows every time you complain. But the real burden isn't the weight, it's the habit. Because complaining becomes automatic, almost comforting, like scratching a wound that never heals. You wake up late and grumble at the alarm clock. Your coffee spills, and there goes the irritated sigh. Traffic stops, and your thoughts turn toxic. Most people live like this, as if the world should conform to their expectations, as if reality were a personal offense. But behind every complaint lies a refusal to accept life as it is, a desperate attempt to control the uncontrollable. Have you noticed that every complaint is actually a whisper of helplessness, a disguised way of saying, "I can't handle this"? The Stoics saw this with brutal clarity. To them, complaining was more than a bad habit. It was a failure of perception, a betrayal of the present, an offense to reality. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you that disturbs you, but how you interpret it." But the chronic complainer never questions their interpretation. They just repeat, just grumble, just suffer. That's when I realized complaining is like lighting a candle, only to burn yourself with it. At first, I didn't even notice I was doing it. It was just venting, just a thought, just a harmless remark. But every complaint fed the beast of dissatisfaction, of ingratitude, of resentment, and the cost. High, silent, destructive. That's when I found a simple, almost silent, Stoic practice that began to change everything. A habit that requires nothing but awareness, yet delivers a kind of inner freedom you never thought possible. And today, after applying it daily, I can say, it changed my life. Not because the world got better, but because I stopped fighting it. If you often feel tired, bitter, emotionally drained by everything around you, this video is not just a reflection. It's an invitation to break free from the most invisible addiction in your mind. But to accept that invitation, you'll have to confront something no one wants to admit. You may have become a chronic complainer without even realizing it. And that's where the Stoic path truly begins. Have you ever been in a quiet room, but still felt noise echoing in your head? That echo, repetitive, irritated, exhausted, often isn't thought. It's complaint. The mind complains even in silence, like a misaligned radio stuck on static. What few people realize is, complaining isn't just a habit. It's an addiction. Yes, like nicotine, like sugar, like endlessly scrolling your feed. Because every complaint offers momentary relief, a discharge of tension, a false sense of control over your frustration. You complain, and for a moment, it feels like you're right, like you've been wronged, like you deserve more, like you're the victim. And that is addictive. Complaining works like a reward circuit. You trigger the emotion, get attention, outrage, sympathy, and your mind learns, this works, do it again. But the cost is quiet and cruel, because the more you complain, the more powerless you feel, the more you reinforce that the world is against you, the more you weaken your own sense of strength. And every time you repeat the cycle, something within you begins to shut down. Your ability to accept, your ability to act, your ability to be grateful. The Stoics called this the loss of reason, not logic, but the inner command center they called hegemonikon. Epictetus would say the issue is never what happens, but what you decide to do with it inside yourself. But the chronic complainer doesn't decide anymore. They just react. Automatic, conditioned, programmed, as if every frustration pushes a hidden button, and the response is always the same. Grumble, sigh, irritate, drama. Have you ever lived with someone like this? Someone who complains about the heat, the cold, the rain, the sun, the noise, the silence? They're not just tired of the world. They're trapped inside themselves. And complaining is the only language they've learned to speak. Here's the hard truth. No one is born a complainer. A baby cries, but it doesn't complain. It feels. It reacts, but it doesn't judge the world. We were taught to complain by exhausted parents, by negative coworkers, by a culture that glorifies outrage. We learned to believe that complaining meant intelligence, sophistication, critical thinking. But most of the time, complaining is just fear in disguise. Fear of accepting what cannot be changed. Fear of looking weak if we stay silent. Fear of facing life as it is, raw, real, and unfiltered. And that's where the addiction sets in repetition, in familiarity, in the absence of silence. Have you ever tried going a full day without complaining? One day, no muttering, no internal criticism. No, this shouldn't be this way. Try it, and you'll see how addicted your mind is to resistance. The Stoics weren't seeking outer silence. They trained to silence the internal noise born from resistance. Because at its core, every complaint is this: unspoken resistance, a disguised no, an attack on the present moment. And like all resistance, it consumes energy, drains focus, sabotages clarity. A mind that complains too much loses the ability to observe, to think firmly, to act calmly. Here's something deeper. You're not complaining about the world. You're complaining about the gap between what is and what you wish it were. The source of frustration is not reality, but the friction between reality and expectation. That friction generates heat. That heat turns into irritation, and the mind vents that heat through complaint. It's as if every complaint says, I wanted things to be different, but wanting change is nothing, and insisting on that desire only deepens the pain. Marcus Aurelius said, if you're distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this, you have the power to revoke at any moment. Do you see how powerful that is? You can revoke it now, at any moment. It's not easy, but it's simple, and it all starts with awareness. Not silencing your voice, but silencing the reaction, to observe, to name the impulse, and not follow it, because a mind trained in complaining is always looking for an enemy, and when it finds none outside, it creates one inside. The true Stoic knows that peace doesn't depend on the temperature, traffic, other people's moods, or politics. It depends on what you feed in your own mind. And every moment you choose not to complain, not through repression, but through acceptance, you take a step toward freedom, not the illusion of controlling everything, but the real kind, the freedom from being controlled by anything. That's the foundation, the starting point, the first rung of the Stoic mind. The real training begins when life truly starts to provoke you. It's easy to seem calm when no one's testing you. But what about when someone cuts you off mid-sentence? When you're falsely accused, ignored, provoked, mocked? Something ignites inside you, a fire that rises quickly and demands revenge, a response, retaliation. Your heart races, your breathing shifts, your voice gets ready to strike, and then you react. But in that instant, you've already lost. You lost control. You lost peace. You lost the chance to choose something else. Because reacting is instinct. Responding is strength. Reacting is like sneezing. It just happens. Responding is like drawing a bow. You choose the angle, the timing, the aim. The Stoics understood this with surgical clarity. Epictetus said, it's not what happens that disturbs you, but how you judge what happens. Between stimulus and response, there's a space, and in that space lives your freedom. But few people see that space. Most live like gunpowder. One spark and they explode. That sarcastic comment, that veiled criticism, that unexpected betrayal. Everything feels like it demands an instant reaction. But what if you simply didn't? To the Stoics, silence wasn't cowardice. It was strategy. It was power. Staying silent when everything inside screams. That's strength. Because silence is an invisible shield. A way of saying, I saw what happened. I felt it. But I am not its hostage. Reacting feeds chaos. Silence preserves order. But make no mistake, this silence isn't passivity. It's not escape, not fear. It's restraint, like the warrior who could strike, but chooses not to waste his sword. A Stoic trained mind learns this. It feels the urge, the anger, the shame, the craving to strike back, but it breathes. And in that space between emotion and reaction, it finds something rare, clarity. Imagine this. You're in a heated argument. The other person raises their voice, accuses, provokes. Everything inside you shouts, respond. But you choose silence. And in that silence, you notice their fragility, their loss of control, the fear behind their aggression. And you also notice your own strength. Because you're no longer fighting to be right. You're fighting to protect your peace. As Seneca wrote, true power is not in subduing others, but in mastering yourself. When you choose silence, You break the cycle. Because every attack expects a defense. Every offense expects a reaction. When you offer neither, you dismantle the game. You disarm the aggressor. But more importantly, you protect your inner sanctuary. But the truth is, this silence isn't natural. It must be built like a muscle. At first, you'll fail. You'll explode. You'll regret it. You'll promise to do better next time. And that's okay. Stoicism doesn't demand perfection. It demands practice. Every time you hold your tongue when you could attack, you're reshaping yourself. You're ceasing to be a reaction and becoming a choice. And it's not about suppressing emotions. It's about transcending them. To watch anger like a visitor. To see irritation like a wave. Rising, cresting, and passing. The Stoic doesn't become cold. He becomes steady. Because he knows that every strong emotion follows a pattern. It rises, it surges, and wants to erupt. But it can also be received, observed, dissolved. Imagine the power of that in your life. An insult, and you remain composed. A criticism, and you listen before answering. An attack, and you choose stillness. That's not weakness. That's self-command in its highest form. It's proving, through action, not argument, that you won't be ruled by other people's emotions. And the more you practice, the more you realize this silence isn't empty. It holds dignity, presence, power. And it's not just for outer conflict. It's for when anxiety rises, when sadness knocks in the middle of the night, when fear whispers, retreat. In silence, you hear your conscience. In silence, you remember your path. That's why the Stoics valued stillness so deeply. Because in stillness, everything falls away, and everything true remains. That's the power of silence. It needs no defense. It simply is. And whoever commands that silence commands themselves. But not all battles are external. Some live inside you. And that's where the most dangerous enemy waits. Not every complaint is loud. Some live in silence, whispering deep within your mind. You might appear calm. You might smile. You might even say, "I'm fine." But underneath, something grumbles. A quiet dissatisfaction. A constant judgment. A comparison that never ends. It's like a hidden leak in a mind. It doesn't drown you, but it seeps in, weakens you, corrodes you. This is the most dangerous kind of complaint, because no one sees it, no one hears it, but it's always there, shadowing every thought, every decision, every feeling. You wake up and already feel like the day is off. You look at yourself and think, "I'm not enough." You scroll through social media and whisper, "Why don't I have that?" These aren't words. They're undigested emotions. Feelings of inadequacy dressed up as normal thoughts. And you go on living, not realizing you're trapped in a cycle of mental complaint. A prison you built for yourself. And one of the most common cells is comparison. Comparing yourself to others is a disguised form of complaining about your own life. It's like staring at someone else's plate and forgetting to chew your own food. You begin to measure your happiness with someone else's ruler. Their body, their routine, their success, and everything you have suddenly feels small. But the Stoics warned, comparing yourself is wasting the one life only you can live. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you're disturbed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this, you can erase right now. You can erase it right now. But to do that, you have to recognize the voice. Because this complaint shapeshifts. Sometimes, it looks like perfectionism. You don't say, 'I hate my life,' but you say, 'I should be further along. I should be earning more. I should be stronger, calmer, more productive.' And you call that discipline. But it's not. It's punishment. It's self-hatred disguised as ambition. A cycle where nothing you do is ever enough. And when your mind lives in that place, your body feels it. You feel tired, anxious, irritable, but you don't know why. Because no one yelled at you. No one criticized you. No one offended you. It was you. Subtly, repetitively, automatically. Internal complaining is like walking under a cloud, even on sunny days. And its root often lies in unspoken expectations. You expected someone to act a certain way. You expected to be appreciated. You expected something to work out, and it didn't. But no one knew. No one promised. No one owes you. Still, your mind protests, builds tension, breeds resentment, fuels frustration, and that pulls you away from the present, away from awareness. away from peace. The Stoics knew that pain rarely comes from events, but from what we hope they would be. That's why they trained inner vigilance, not just outer silence, but the ability to watch what moves inside. Seneca said, "Nothing is more wretched than the one who looks at everything through eyes of envy." So how do you break this invisible cycle? Make visible what's been hidden. Stop. Watch your thoughts. Don't fight them. Name them. Say to yourself, "That's a comparison. That's an expectation. That's harsh self-criticism." Because when you name it, you slow it down. When you slow it down, you create space. And in that space, something else can arise. Acceptance, gratitude, presence. The mind that frees itself from silent complaining doesn't become fake positive. It simply stops resisting what is. And in that stillness, a quiet strength appears. A peace not tied to circumstances, but to how you interpret them. But even that peace isn't the end of the road, because there's one more layer, subtle and dangerous. You may have stopped complaining out loud. You may have tamed the comparison. You may have quieted the judgment, but your body still reacts. The impatient sigh, the rolled eyes, the tense silence, the arms crossed, the subtle withdrawal at the first sign of discomfort. These gestures speak too, and more than that, they shape your inner state, because the body stores memory, and every time you tense, flinch, or erupt, you reinforce the message. Life bothers me. The Stoics didn't want to control just thoughts or speech. They trained for total command of the self. Posture, breath, action, reaction, not as performance, but as sacred discipline. Marcus Aurelius said, "Pay attention not just to what you think, but to how you move through the world." It's the body that reveals what the mind tries to hide, and often the final battlefield is not your thoughts, but your reflexes. The mind may go silent, but the body still screams without words. And if your body still acts like a slave to impulse, then the silence in your mind isn't complete. You say you're at peace, but your shoulders are still tense. Your jaw is clenched. Your hands fidget. Your body is not calm. Maybe you've stopped complaining out loud. Maybe you've even quieted your mind, but your body still reacts. Because the body is a mirror of unresolved tension. It reveals what reason tries to suppress. Every deep sigh, every eye roll, every arm crossed in quiet anger is a signal saying, "I'm still at war." The Stoics knew this. They understood that self-control wasn't just mental. It was visible. It was physical. It was embodied. Epictetus, even with a severe physical limitation, said, "You are not your body, but it's your responsibility to care for it as if it were sacred." To the Stoics, the body was a training ground, a space where the soul was molded, where discipline became real. That's why they practiced discomfort. They walked in the cold, took cold baths, slept on hard ground, woke before sunrise, ate in moderation, not to suffer, but to remember. The body must obey reason, not pleasure. Today, that sounds absurd. We live in an age where the body rules. If it's hungry, we eat. If it's tired, we collapse. If it's angry, we explode. But the Stoic reverses the order. He asks, who's in charge? You or your sensations? You or your impulses? And this question isn't answered in words, but in action, in the way you rise from bed, in the posture you carry when entering a room, in the breath you choose when pressure hits. Because physical presence is power. Have you ever seen someone who is truly present? Someone who isn't rushed, who walks with calm authority, who listens with their eyes, who fills a space without needing to dominate it. They transmit something you can't explain, but you can feel. They are here, entire, grounded, and that begins in the body, in awareness of now, in how you move through the world. The Stoic knows the body cannot reflect chaos. It must become a vessel of stability. That's why breath matters, why rhythm matters, why gesture matters. Every time you breathe deeply instead of sighing in frustration, you're training. Every time you walk with intention instead of rushing blindly, you're training. And slowly, the mind starts to follow. Because body and mind are always in dialogue. And often, it's the body that leads. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." But he could have also said, "The soul is shaped by the form of your habits." If you live tense, closed, rushed, don't expect a peaceful mind. It's imitating your body. But if you choose to dwell in your body with presence, The world around you slows down because someone who is present doesn't need to defend themselves, doesn't need to prove anything, doesn't need to fill silence with noise. Physical presence is a form of active stillness, a gesture of control, a ritual of invisible strength. That's why the Stoics train the body with rigor, not for vanity, but for symbolism. A straight posture isn't just aesthetic. It's an inner declaration. I'm here. I'm firm. I will not run. Eating slowly isn't ritual. It's discipline. Waking early isn't obligation. It's sovereignty. Every conscious movement is a reminder that you're not a slave to impulse. You are a commander, a master, a practitioner of freedom, the kind that begins from within. And even when the world screams, even when anger rises, even when fear approaches, if your body remains present, your mind finds ground. But this doesn't happen overnight, because the body holds old patterns, reflexes, emotional memory, and often it moves before you think. That's why the Stoics use the body as a tool of awareness. Walking in silence, training through discomfort, enduring the cold, standing while others sat, speaking less, breathing slower, not to show off strength, but to remember who commands whom. You are the impulse. And every time you win that silent battle, you build something greater than muscles. You build inner authority. Even on days when the mind is fragile, the body will remind you, you've overcome worse. But what good is it to master the body if you haven't yet made peace with life itself? You might stop complaining out loud. You might train your thoughts. You might even gain control over your body's reactions. And yet, you still feel something is off, as if the world owes you an explanation, a reward, a second chance. That's when outer silence is no longer enough, because something inside still resists. You say you're at peace, but only if things go your way, if no one frustrates you, if life cooperates. That's not peace. That's negotiation. And the Stoics knew this well. They knew the real end of complaining isn't found in silence, but in reconciliation. Life doesn't need to change. You need to stop fighting it. But this demands something rare in today's world: radical acceptance. Acceptance is not giving up. It's not passivity. It's not folding your arms in resignation. Acceptance is releasing your grip on what already is. It's no longer swimming against the current, not to drown, but to stand firmly on the ground of the now. How many times have you suffered? Not because of what happened, but because of what you expected to happen. How many times have you tried to control the uncontrollable? The timing, the people, the outcome, and the harder you held on, the more everything slipped through your fingers. Like sand, like smoke, like life. The sharpest pain doesn't come from reality, but from resisting reality. Because life is what it is. Not always what we want, but almost always what we need. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this in the face of war, loss, and death. Love your fate, not what you expected, but what has been given. Amor fati. Love what is, not what might have been. That's the key. Because as long as you fight reality, you remain divided, fragmented, at war with what is. And every complaint, loud or silent, is a form of resistance, of protest, of refusal. But the Stoic doesn't protest. He listens. When something goes wrong, he doesn't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" He asks, "What is life trying to teach me now?" That shift in question changes everything, because it shifts you from victim to agent. You're not just the one who suffers. You are the one who responds. And that's where true power begins. In seeing clearly that the world isn't personal. It's natural, unpredictable, imperfect, but always revealing. Radical acceptance is the act of embracing what has arrived without wishing it were different. It's not about fighting the past, not about apologizing for reality, not about demanding the present bend to your will. Because whatever you demand becomes pain when it doesn't happen. But whatever you accept becomes path. The Stoic doesn't surrender to pain. He observes it, he feels it, and he walks with it until it changes shape. Because even pain carries a seed of wisdom, of maturity, of awareness. Do you want peace? Then stop telling life what it should be and start walking with it as it is. Do you want freedom? Then let go of control and learn to respond with what's in your hands. This isn't resignation. It's alignment, with clarity, with courage, with acceptance. Because the one who accepts doesn't freeze. The one who accepts acts with precision. Stoic acceptance doesn't paralyze. It prepares. It helps you act without rage, change what can be changed, and release what can't be held anymore. But before you can accept, you have to stop. Stop running. Stop blaming. Stop treating life as your enemy. That's the mistake many make. They think acceptance is weakness, when in truth, acceptance is strength rooted in truth. It's growing roots in the now, letting go of control that never existed, and saying to the world, I see you, I accept you, and still, I move forward. Radical acceptance is not the end of transformation. It's the ground where transformation begins, where complaint turns to clarity, where resistance becomes wisdom, where resentment dissolves and becomes calm, deliberate action. That's the moment you stop trying to escape and begin, finally, to live. And here's the most powerful part. Acceptance doesn't depend on circumstances. It depends only on you. You can practice it now, in traffic, in grief, on a hard morning, or when you realize, once again, life didn't go as planned. And in that moment, you can complain, or you can breathe. And remember, life didn't come to obey you. It came to reveal who you are willing to become. And only when you stop complaining about life can you finally hear what it's been trying to tell you. Complaining seems harmless, just venting, just a natural reaction. But behind every complaint is a kind of prison. You complain about your routine and reinforce that you have no control. You complain about people and hand your peace over to them. You complain about time and waste the little you have. And while you complain, you postpone, you retreat, you get distracted. But life doesn't wait. It moves, and slowly, it teaches, whether gently or harshly, that complaining changes nothing. Acceptance does. Calm action does. Personal responsibility does. The Stoics didn't ask for a better world. They became better, so they could face any world. They knew that real strength isn't having everything under control, but remaining grounded when nothing is. And that's what happens. When you stop complaining, your mind clears, your body slows, your heart opens. You stop fighting the wind and start adjusting your sails. You begin to see life not as an enemy, but as a training partner. Every frustration becomes a test. Every discomfort, refinement. Every silence, an invitation to be fully present. And suddenly, that stone on your chest, the one that grew heavier with each complaint, begins to dissolve. Not because everything got better, but because you changed the way you see. And that change changes everything. It's no longer a gaze that demands, but one that receives, that recognizes, that understands. Discipline quiets impulse. Silence dissolves anger. Presence anchors the body. And acceptance liberates. And so, without fanfare, without magic formulas, without empty promises, you discover stopping the habit of complaining was the habit that changed your life. Because it wasn't just a habit. It was the gateway to a new way of being. More lucid, more grounded, more free. If something in this message resonated with you, don't say anything just yet. Just observe. Watch your next complaint arise. And choose stillness, the pause, the awareness. And if after that, you feel like sharing, this space is open. Leave a comment below. What part of your life is still trapped in complaint? And what shifts when you finally accept it? And if this message touched something inside you, like this video, not as a mindless click, but as an act of presence, as a quiet reminder, this matters. Subscribe. Walk with us. We'll see you in the next step.